Welcome to the dissection. So you by now have on your gloves and you've got your gowns on. And I'm first going to direct your attention to the rat dissection post-lab report. So there'll be some questions here. What surprised you most about the rat? How long was the small and large intestine? We'll measure that out. What is the largest organ in the rat's anatomy? So we'll keep your eye out for that. Review here about how blood flows through the heart. I've set it up for you, so you'll fill that in. And then some questions about the rodent family in general. And importantly, you're going to take a photo at the end of your dissection and you will label it like you did with the heart dissection with a minimum of 10 labels, and you'll use Google Drawing to do that. Okay, so that's what you'll be doing after the lab. So for the lab itself, you're going to take out the tools from your dissecting toolkit that you have in front of you. It's either going to be orange or it's going to be blue. Open this up and remove the tools, and you'll put them onto the card that you see next to you on the bench there with the images of the internal organs of the rat. So I've got all my tools out there and we'll be using pretty much all of them today. Okay, so as you can see, there's an image on the board that tells you the order in which we're going to make incisions, and that's the order we'll follow. But first of all, let's talk about the rodent family and look at the external structure of the rat. Okay, so there's rats there in your dissecting tray on their backs. So they are part of the rodent family. So these are mammals. This includes things like squirrels and chipmunks. And they are the most successful group of mammals. So that is that they outnumber all other mammals combined. And this is because they have a very rapid rate of reproduction. They adapt very quickly to changing conditions, and they have a very varied diet. And these are things I think that we instinctively know rats will eat anything. And because their internal anatomy is very similar to humans, we use rats to test drugs like cancer drugs and other medication. They also reproduce very quickly, so we have a ready supply of rats. So looking at their external anatomy, so on the dorsal side, so this is on the back, you'll see that there is fur here. So that's one of the characteristics of mammals. Mammals have fur. However, you'll see there's also signs of scales, particularly here on the tail and on the feet. So this shows evidence of a reptilian ancestry or evolution from reptiles. Their ears are shaped like funnels, and this is to, funnel the sound. So they have extremely good hearing, and you can see how wide their ears are, and they act like funnels to funnel sound waves to their brain. They also have whiskers, and again, these are sensory organs. They can sense changes in air pressure, so they can sense when danger is nearby or another animal is approaching. Their eyelids, they have what's called nictitating membranes. So nictitating membranes is another membrane that is a clear membrane. They can just sweep over the eye to get dust particles out of the way without having to actually close their eyes and lose vision momentarily. So that is another characteristic that they have. On the front side, so we call the front side the frontal side. So the rat is now on its back. You'll see that they have very sharp incisors. So if you look up here, up by the mouth and kind of push the top lip up, you'll see that there are two very pronounced incisors. And so this outer surface is dentine, which wears away, and that always keeps these incisors very sharp. This is called the philtrum, this line here that leads from the upper lip all the way up to the nose. And of course, it has nostrils. And there's an opening under the tail, and so that would be the anus, which is right there. All of our rats are males, and so this is the scrotum, this area right here, and the testes will descend into the scrotum only during the mating season. And so the rest of the time, the testes are held up in here inside the body. Okay, and the testes, of course, are sensitive to temperature. And then they have their feet, they have specialized claws for climbing up a wide variety of surfaces, right? So you can see that on front and back. And rats have a certain way of walking. They are digigrade, and this means that they walk on their toes, whereas humans, we are plantigrade. So for humans, we actually don't walk on our toes, we walk on the soles of our feet, on the balls of our feet. But rats put their toes down first, and they will walk on their toes. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the internal anatomy. So to do that, we're going to make our first incision with scissors. Okay, and so you're going to make an incision from about the here, so the mid-ventral line, from the pelvis all the way up here to the sternum. And then we will make a transfer cut across the top of the lower limbs and a transfer cut across the bottom of the upper limbs. So this is going to be incision 1, incision 2, incision 3, like you see up on the board. Incision 4 will go all the way up to the base of the neck, and incision 5 will go across from ear to ear. So the most important thing is that you lift up the skin. So as you can see here, I'm lifting up the skin so that you don't puncture internal organs. And I'm just going to make a snip here so that I can actually enter into the abdominal cavity. And always in an pulling upwards with your scissors, you're going to cut through what's called the mesentery here. It's just a very thin membrane. You're going to cut through that and keep moving forward, right? Until you see this opening here, right? You see an opening. You don't want to have your scissors going too deep into the abdominal cavity because you don't want you don't want to be cutting into those organs. Okay, and then I'm going to just turn my rat around and cut down towards the lower limbs. Okay, so now you can already see several items in your rat. Now, if you look at the top here, okay, so if this fluid, you can just let that out of your rat, just fall out to the side here. Okay, and then with a paper towel, you can just soak up that extra liquid. This is just preservative that came out of your rat. Okay, so we don't really want that liquid sloshing around on our dissecting tray. Okay, now if you look up here, you want to see it before you cut into it, but you should be able to see this here, right? So this sheet that goes across the top, and can you identify what that might be? Okay, so that is the diaphragm. That's actually the diaphragm. And then of course here already you can see the liver, right? Largest organ in the body. And of course you can also see now the intestine. Okay, so let's make the second incision. So the second incision is going to be across the bottom here. Okay, and you can cut also down this inner membranous tissue here. Go across to the other side. Okay, and going all the way across to the top of the lower limbs. So what we're viewing now primarily is the digestive system. So we can see clearly the intestine, we can see the liver, and when we start to move things around, we'll be able to identify other organs. So moving now up to the top, I'm just going to turn my page here. Moving up to the top of our rat, you may have to use some force here to cut through the tissue at the top. Again, always pulling away so that you're not cutting into any organs up here. And again, across to the other side. Okay. We have to cut through some mesentery here. All right. Now you should be able to very clearly see the diaphragm, right? So this tissue right here, that right there, that's your diaphragm. Now, in order to lay the skin flaps out flat, you are going to have to break through that diaphragm. So once you have identified it, then you can go ahead and just cut through the center of it so that you can pull the two sides out and make these cuts a little deeper. Make these cuts a little deeper so that you can lay this out flat. Okay, do the same down here. Side's fine. So once you have this side flaps nice and flat, go ahead and take some T-pins and pin out your rats. And when we put the pins in, we angle them away from the specimen itself so that the pins don't get in your way as you proceed to make further incisions and to investigate your specimen. Okay. So we're going to pin this out just like this. Okay. And so now we're going to make the last two incisions. So you're going to cut again. Try not to disturb any of these organs. Cut a little bit further up. Okay. Towards the mouth. And go across the top here like you're going from ear to ear. Okay. You may have to crack a few ribs in order to open this up all the way. All right. Again, you're going to use T-pins to hold this open. So by now, you will see, we just talked about this the other day, this lighter tissue here. So those are salivary glands. You can see some of them here clearly, right? So those are salivary glands. We'll keep this out. And then we're going to do the same thing with the feet. To get myself some more pins. And I'll get more. Okay. So now we can go through and start identifying all the different parts. So if we look at the digestive system, you'll be starting way up here. And remember that there are two tubes. One is the trachea and the other one is the esophagus. So the trachea, remember, will be clearly, you'll be able to feel the cartilaginous rings on the trachea, whereas the esophagus, you won't. So I'm just running my probe down here and I can feel these cartilaginous rings. So I know that that is this lighter color one here. That's the trachea. And I think I poked a hole in it. The one behind it, okay, so I don't know if you can see that. This one here, the one slightly behind it, that's going to be your esophagus. And we know that the esophagus is going to lead all the way down to the stomach, right? So the esophagus, you can see that tube running, this tube right here, running down, and it's going to lead all the way down to the stomach, okay? So there's the esophagus, it's going past the lungs. This is the heart right here, okay? These are the lungs here, right next door to the heart. And we have to look down here and we're going to find the stomach down here. Remember that it is under the liver, right? So we've gone from the esophagus down to the stomach, and the spleen is this tissue here. It's very soft, kind of feathery, excuse me, not the spleen, the pancreas. So that's the pancreas that secretes digestive enzymes. Rats do not have a gallbladder, so you will not be able to find a gallbladder. So they produce very strong bile, and they have more lobes to their liver. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lobes to their liver. Okay, so from the stomach now, so this would be the pyloric sphincter down at this end of the stomach, which controls, remember, this is a circular muscle tissue that controls movement into the small intestine. The esophageal sphincter is going to be up here at the other end of your stomach. Okay. And of course, this is your small intestine. So what we can do now is just gently lift up your small intestine, and you can see it's held together with this see-through membrane called mesentery, right? So mesentery holds it together, and these are all coming off of it, those tubes. So that's a part of your circulatory system, so that all of the nutrients that are coming from your small intestine get into your bloodstream. And of course, they're going to go to the liver for processing, and then they will go to the rest of your body. Okay, so we're just going to kind of slightly, pull at this so that you can get it out of the body cavity itself. Okay, you will just gently tear at the mesentery, okay, until it just pulls itself away. Okay. And then if we want to measure this out, again, we're going to have to just very gently break through the mesentery with your fingers. And pull this out so you can see what's happening here, right? I'm now getting a long piece of small intestine. It's going to then become a large intestine. Right. So once you have all of this out, then what you can do is, using your scissors, once you find the end of your large intestine, you can go ahead. You can see here's a very large, long rectum that is going to lead to the anus. So you can cut that off right there, and then also cut off right at the top here where the small intestine leaves the stomach. So you'd be cutting it off at the pyloric sphincter. All right, so now you have your intestine, and what you can do is lay it out. Okay, and without stretching it too much, just lay it out. Get your ruler and measure how long it is. Okay, so I'm going to be over here. I'm just going to take my fingers off so I can pick up my camera. Okay, so I have now laid out my intestine. I'm going to measure it because I'm going to need that number for my post lab. Okay, so I'll put this back here. Okay, and measure that out. And we're measuring in centimeters. Okay, so this ruler is 15 centimeters long. So mine is about 75 centimeters long. Okay, so we've got the digestive system. So the liver, the stomach, the esophagus, small intestine, large intestine, and there's no gallbladder here. Okay, and the rectum. The spleen is this kind of like sort of a long organ here. And again, it's held in place with mesentery, and you can just cut through that mesentery slightly to remove the spleen, and we're just going to set the spleen aside. So later on, when you take your photo, you're going to have all your organs on your tray, and you'll be able to identify them. Okay, so now we've got our spleen is out. So the other thing that we're going to look at here, and this is part of the excretory system, are the kidneys. So you have a kidney here, and the other kidney is going to be slightly higher up. Okay, so those are the kidneys. We can keep the kidneys in place for now. The stomach we can remove. So I'm just going to cut this mesentery here. Okay, cut through the mesentery. The pancreas is still attached to the stomach. Cut the esophagus. Okay, and this, I'm going to keep this all together so that I have both the pancreas and I have the stomach. Okay. I'm just going to put that on my tray. So here. Okay, so the liver we can see clearly, and the kidneys we can also see clearly. Kidneys clean the blood. Now, if we go to the circulatory system, so the circulatory system, of course, is going to involve the lungs, right? Excuse me, the heart. So here's your heart, and you should see the two atria, those little chambers just sitting right on top of the heart. We can take this out. Be very careful not to lose the atria. So I'm going to have to cut through some vessels that are holding it in place, right? I'm going to cut through this, the inferior vena cava, and I'm going to have to cut through also the aorta at the top here. So just pull away so you can get as much of the vessels as possible. All right, and so there's the heart. There's your heart right there. And you can see that there are these vessels at the top. Okay, so there's your aorta right there. And you can see also superior vena cava. And here is an atrium right there. That would be the left atrium, and the right atrium is right there. Okay, so the heart you can also take out and just place that over there. Okay, so liver, clearly the largest organ. The diaphragm we broke through. So this leaves us here with the lungs. Okay, so these are the lungs right here. And we would expect the trachea then to be leading down into the lungs. So the lungs are 5-lobed, right? So which is different for us. So there are 5 lobes, and we have the trachea, and then splits into the bronchi, right, into 2 tubes that lead into the lungs. So if we want, we can take these lungs out. We'll also have to cut through mesentery to gently remove the lungs. All right, we'll just put the lungs right there. Okay, so what are we left with here? Okay, so salivary glands up there. We can leave that there. You can identify that. And the kidneys are here. We have not covered the reproductive system, so we're not going to go into the reproductive system. So that, my friends, and here's more salivary tissue, is as far as we are going to go today. So once you have everything set out like this, then you'll want to kind of do your photo shoot. So get your intestine back, get it all nicely arranged so that you can show the large intestine and be able to label that on your photo, and the small intestine and label that on your photo. So make sure that the kidneys are showing, and the liver, of course, will be showing. Make sure that you have a salivary gland showing as well, and that your trachea is also visible, and your esophagus, remember, is right next door to it, is also visible. And take your photo.